Yeah. Okay, we'll cover that later under the apologies. Thank you. In addition to this, we have attending the meeting the following Melton Borough Council officers: Chief Executive Eddie Coverley, Director of Corporate Services Dawn Garton, the Monitoring Officer Kieran Stockley, Senior Democratic Services and Scrutiny Officer Adam Green, Democratic Services Officer Carol Tedds. And I also, we welcome in the public viewing area the Leader of the Council, Councillor Joe Orson, members of the Cabinet and Councillor Illingworth. In addition to this, we have the following external people available if required via the remote link. Nathan Elvery, a strategic advisor to both of the councils. Now, the first order of events is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence? Council.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, maybe I know that Councillor Wood said he couldn't go to something or other, and I'm not sure whether it was tonight or not. It's my apologies. I'm not sure, but I know there was something that he couldn't go to. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Declarations of interest. I will invite members who wish to do so to make declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda. Do any members wish to declare an interest tonight? Thank you. I will invite any officers around the table who are available to participate in the meeting if they wish to make declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda for this meeting. Chief Executive Eddie Coverley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The draft memorandum of agreement for consideration this evening is a legal framework and will therefore be led by the monetary officer, supported by the Section 151 officer and also Nathan Elvery, our strategic advisor. I am, though, available to support the committee should it be necessary, and given some elements of the proposition affect my employment, I would like to declare an interest in item 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. De Coverley. We're here tonight to consider the governance and risk issues and make comments on the draft memorandum of understanding, not making comments on the detailed business case. It's not a case of tonight or considering whether it's a right or wrong thing to do. It's a matter of looking at risks in this draft framework that will be going forward to the Cabinet on the 6th of December and into the process. But tonight is not about deciding whether it's a good thing to do or not. It's looking at the risk and other governance comments in the agreement. I will be summarising and making notes during the meeting, and we'll go through democracy, and we will have the minutes through to write and summarise our comments for tonight, which will go through to the Cabinet support for the Cabinet in readiness for the 6th of December meeting. There is no right or wrong. There may be no need to debate comments or grade comments and risks coming forward. That will be for the Cabinet to consider, and there'll be I don't see any yes or no voting, and we can agree a list of the key points at the end of the meeting. Firstly, I will introduce the monitoring officer, who will present a summary of the key points in the draft memorandum of understanding, or MOU. At the end, I've asked the monitoring officer to summarise the quality control so far in producing the draft MOU, and then I will ask some questions specifically on the paper itself, not the MOU, before handing over to members. So over to the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of the report before Audit and Standards Committee is to set out the proposed approach to operating a strategic partnership should it be supported in December by Council. We've done that by way of a draft memorandum of agreement, which is appended to the reports before members tonight. The background is set out in paragraphs 4.1 to 4.7 of your reports, and a summary of the salient points from the business case, which was reviewed by scrutiny committee yesterday, is set out in paragraphs 4.8 to 4.10, and then again at 5.5 to 5.7 of the report. This committee is being asked to review and provide comments on the draft memorandum of agreement, which sets out the framework that will underpin any proposed arrangement, includes the principles for creation of a strategic partnership, perceived benefits, and the arrangements for exiting the arrangement. And it also sets out how the partnership will be governed. What the MOA does not seek to do is seek to combine the councils, undermine any sovereign obligations or decision-making processes of each council, and or replace those existing arrangements that we might have in place at this time. Members today are invited to provide comments and feedback on the governance arrangements set out in the MOA, of which a summary is provided at 5.8 to 5.6 of your reports. The memorandum of agreement sets out the framework that underpins any proposed arrangements, and all comments, as you've said, Chair, will be considered by Cabinet on the 6th of December. They will then make a recommendation onto Council at the end of December. You touched upon quality control, so I'd like to advise the committee that the MOA is largely a legal document, which to date has been developed with the support of external legal advice provided by Mr. Nathan Elvery. He was commissioned by both councils to provide support to this process due to his extensive experience of bringing together partnerships such as these, and in some cases dissolving them. Nathan was able to draw on agreements that had been put in place through these existing partnerships, which were operating effectively elsewhere, but also advise on some of the changes that might be necessary to ensure that any memorandum of agreement was fit for purpose for this council, should it choose to enter a strategic partnership. In addition to this, the monitoring officers for each council have reviewed and amended the document to ensure it's fit for purpose for our individual councils. Whilst we've done that at some points together, we've also done that individually to ensure that I, as your monitoring officer, was ensuring it was fit for purpose for Melton Borough Council. Once Audit and Standards have reviewed and provided those comments, Chair, it's my intention to seek external legal advice on the document just to provide further assurance before any final version is presented to Council in December. With this in mind, I think that should provide the relevant reassurance I'm hoping to members that in preparing the memorandum of agreement for their consideration, the document has been through a rigorous quality control and due diligence process. The legal implications are set out in section 10 of your report. It sets out the legal basis for the partnership, the proposals and the MOA. So I don't intend to cover those in any detail in my summary unless members have any specific questions. In terms of management of risk, the key strategic risks will be identified, reviewed and mitigated through the development of a risk assessment as part of the business case, which will then be monitored as part of the council's normal risk management processes. The business case includes the identified risks of the strategic partnership to this point, but for the purposes of this committee, the risks in relation to the MOA have been identified in the table at 15.1.2 of the report, with the additional mitigation provided below. Those risks, in summary, are partnership governance set out in section 5.9 of your report. The proposal there is 3 informal meeting structures to facilitate the effective running of any of the shared strategic partnership. Shared officers, those arrangements are set out in 5.10 to 5.13 of your report, and paragraph 14 details the HR implications. We've also considered finance and the apportionment of costs. So the initial proposal is for the councils to meet 50% of the costs relating to the proposition, which is the shared CEO and the deputy shared chief executives. Members should note that it's a legal requirement that one council cannot subsidise another council, so any shared arrangements will need to be agreed in writing by both councils and based on a pro rata basis as set out in the operations, as set out in the options that are available to each council, which are contained in the memorandum of agreement. If members have any questions on that, I might bring in the Chief Finance Officer to elaborate on that element. There's a provision for the councils to withdraw from the agreement under the termination and review clause. It's set out, the procedure is set out at paragraph 5.20 of your report. And the other clauses predominantly are what we call boilerplate clauses, which you would expect to form any part of a legal agreement. to ensure it's a robust document. But I'm happy to answer any question on those too. That brings me to the end of my introduction, Chair. But I'd like to highlight that this committee's comments and feedback are a key part of the development of the memorandum of agreement process. So I'd be interested in all comments, debate that follows. Thank you. I'm happy to take any question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much on that one. What I've done with my questions, I've split them off between what I thought in the paper were general interest questions on the business case for a later time and what needed to be focused to help the meeting on governance issues. My first question, Kieran, it says in the report we don't yet have independent expert legal opinion. So we haven't got that tonight. How will that feed into the process?
So,
And will each council have their own opinion, or is it a joint opinion?
Chair, it's a really valid question. I took the decision that it would be premature of me to seek independent legal advice before putting the MOA before Audit and Standards tonight. So once Audit and Standards have provided their comments, I will then go out, seek that external legal advice. We will be seeking independent legal advice. So we're not going to get a joint advice. I'm seeking independent legal advice for Melton Borough Council, and the Harborough's monitoring officer will seek independent advice on behalf of Harborough District Council. That will then feed in to the council report in December so that will feed in before all members are asked to make a decision on whether to proceed.
Thank you. Paragraph 1.9 on page 4. It says relevant committees at HDC will also consider and provide feedback to their cabinet members on the draft business case and draft memorandum agreement. Will this be available to our cabinet and our councillors for the 20th of December? And will these be public documents available at HDC?
Can I just clarify that question? Will these be available to will the comments from Harborough District Councils
Be available to the cabinet be available to the cabinet on the 6th of December and be available in the process of what comes to the council, our MBC council, on the 20th of December?
My understanding, and I may look to our chief exec on this, is that yes, those comments and feedback from their committee should be available to members of these committees. Their papers are published in exactly the same way as our papers will be published. It is our intention to ensure that the cabinet report that goes forward contains the comments from both scrutiny committee and Audit and Standards.
Thank you. Paragraph 4.10c on page 6. It says, the last sentence, additionally, HDC's base budget for 2022-23 and medium-term financials already include savings associated with the sharing of senior leadership posts. I would ask members of the committee to consider disregarding that. We are here to consider this case on behalf of MBC and the population of Melton. What they've already decided to do should have no impact on what we're looking at. More of a statement than a question. Paragraph 4.10e, page 6. It says this paragraph includes housing. In 2007, HDC transferred their stock to a local housing authority, which has subsequently been absorbed into platform housing with a very large 250 million turnover, and is able to get large government grants for new homes and retrofit. There may be some staff working at Harborough on commissioning and housing liaison, but I would expect more detail on this in the business plan. But it's not like for like, I think, to be clear on that one. Paragraph 5.43, page 7. What does partnership governance arrangements mean?
Chair, that's explained in detail at parts 5.9 through, well, 5.9 of the report. The partnership governance is what is proposed to be put in place to facilitate the effective running of the partnership.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Did it mean it was like shared democracy, or you were throwing groups of people into a single pot?
No,
Thank-
Chair,
thank
it's the informal structure that will be used to oversee the partnership.
you.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question around termination and review. In here, it's
You'll get a chance. I'm just going through these questions, as I said, councillor, then we'll come on. I'll invite you in as the first person after. Is that
Right,
okay?
Oh, we'll let you take the show then.
We'll be handing over when I've been through my review of the quite a number, because I'm applying due diligence to this particular document. Thank you, councillor, is which we're supposed to be doing as an audit committee. Paragraph 7.2, page 13. Who are the key stakeholders?
Sorry, Chair, I missed the paragraph.
7.3, it talks of consultation. Who are the key stakeholders?
I think 7.2.
Sorry, 7.7.2a, sorry.
Again, Chair, I might need to bring in the chief exec on this one, but I understand key stakeholders are our key businesses, the main partners that, no, I'll bring in the chief exec if I may.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, just to refer you to 5.9.2, where it first refers to the stakeholder group. I believe that's referring to the oh, my apologies. Sorry, my apologies. You're not referring to the stakeholder group, you're referring to the list of stakeholders written to. Is that right? Apologies. We can provide that separately. Yes, thank you.
The only other question on that is, it says that you're going to introduce the subject to Parish Council on 28th of November. Wouldn't it be better for it to go through the process to the 20th of December and formal agreement before you did that?
Chair, if I may explain, we have written to our parish councils already. The meeting on the 28th of November is just an update session, much like we've been doing all member briefings. So it's also to keep parish councils engaged. Once it's been through the process in late December, once it's been through council, we'll have another scheduled parish council liaison meeting at some point in the new year, date to be fixed.
Coming to the final question. You mentioned due diligence in your verbal report. I didn't see due diligence mentioned in the paper. Have we done due diligence, as I understand due diligence to be, of the partner, checking the financial background, the strength of the organisation? Has that been done, or is it included in the business case?
The due diligence is part of the business case, so that will set out all of the it sets out lots of different bits, Chair. It sets out previous arrangements, it sets out examples of other authorities, successes, what the intended benefits, the proposition, the financial aspects have been through both of our section 151, and it's as a result of that business case, if it were to be approved in December, would the MOA flow. So I would suggest that the due diligence of the proposal is set out in the business case. The due diligence for the memorandum of agreement has been through strategic advisor, both monitoring officers, and will be subject to external advice too.
Final question. Can you tell us the level of HR expertise input into this so far?
We've had we've had HR support throughout. HR implications have been detailed in every report, and I think probably it might be worth bringing the Director of Corporate Services in on this point.
Yeah. So both HR professionals from each council have met with the consultants independently throughout the process on a variety of matters. And also in the business case, it refers to reference to East Midlands councils. So we've got independent advice on key aspects as part of that. And that will form part of the recommendations that go to council around things like employment status, pay, etc. So those elements.
Thank you. I'll hand over to members, and I think Councillor Wilkinson, you're raring to go.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted clarification from the monitoring officer. There's a provision where we can terminate in 6 months, but it says we have to give not less than 12 months notice. So realistically, are we tied into this for 18 months if we do go ahead? Can you just clarify that?
Yeah, so this was a point that was raised by members that prior to committee, really, as we were drafting and building the memorandum of agreement. So there was a provision in the memorandum of agreement that required not less than 12 months written notice. However, taking on board the fact that we've got an upcoming election, there might be a change of administration. What we've also done is built in a provision. What we will do, should I say, is build in a provision for us to be able to terminate that within 6 months of the creation of any partnership. Because of the process that we have to go through, that appendix has not yet been completed, so it will not be a 18-month, because that's not what members are asking or requiring. We will build in a quick exit provision within 6 months. Anytime after 6 months, if there is a decision to be made by either council to exit the partnership, then they will be required to give not less than 12 months notice, because within the 6 months, it's unlikely for any major costs or processes and procedures to have actually been embedded and built in. Thereafter, it would take a longer process for us to sort of disaggregate those things that we've brought together. I can't quite yet give you the exact detail of that, because we will be seeking advice on how best to how to make it as painless as possible should that decision be made by members within 6 months, but that will come ASAP.
Thank you. I noted as well that the schedule's not in detail in there, and I will just top up what Councillor Wilkins said on this, is that when you think about the election in May, by the time people have been through induction and got their act together, I'm not too sure signing a document in December or January gives them enough time. I would have thought it needed to be till the 31st of July, whatever that would be, 3 months from the election. I don't know what members think about that. So it didn't look good to me, 6 months, signed a document, and it looked to me as if people were tied in, and it didn't give them enough time to get their feet under the table. But I do have something on another section that would hopefully help persuade the people that it might be a good thing. But Councillor Posnett.
Well, can I just say I've got exactly the same question. It just seems to me we're spending all of this money, and 50,000 isn't it, because we've now got to spend more for extra legal advice, and being as some of them charge £250 an hour, that's going to not be an inconsiderate amount of money, is it? As you've said, there's an election in 6 months. They've got to give notice if the new councils, I mean, they may not even be the same administration as we both are now. There's all sorts of differences, and I agree entirely with what you've just said, Chairman.
Would you be happy, Councillor Wilkinson, if we sort of made a note that Cabinet should consider whatever the paperwork is, that it covers to the 31st of July?
Yeah, I was just going to follow up. Just what once if full council agrees on the 20th of December, what date does this agreement take effect, and when does that 6 months start, and when does it end? Is it effective?
Understanding, and this might be
following
subject
day
to
or-
change, but the effective date of the agreement would be the 1st of January 2023. That you want to make that, Chair, make that recommendation, rather than it be 6 months, that it be 7 months, and that can be considered as part of the comments from Audit and Standards.
I mean, would
Committee
we be
to-
happy with giving the new people 3 months to get their feet in and consider 31st of July to request to put that forward to Cabinet? Yeah, fine, I'll write that down. Thank you. Next member, Councillor Holmes.
So now then, let me get this right. I have never thought this should be rushed. Do believe that we are in times when we probably have to join up with another council. But the thing that has bothered me, I went for the mayor to a civic service at Market Harborough. Various members came up to me. I didn't go up to them. They came up to me. And none of them, not one, wanted this. They were very concerned about it. So all I am asking you, are you saying that you would prefer this to be shelved until after the next election? Or-
No, it's about the notice. If this was agreed, it's the notice.
Right. So then, if we are told that after this year, so after this term, one more year of a cabinet, and then you needn't have a cabinet anymore. So probably one more year after this, there wouldn't be that we needn't go and have Market Harborough. We probably want to be joined with something else, but why are we rushing it?
I couldn't quite.
I can't see.
What is the governance risk point you want me to note for the cabinet to consider?
Because it's such a risk to everybody. Do we know all the finances of Market Harborough? Where in this has it got all the finances?
I think that
This is an audit committee.
Yeah.
And audit, we know what audit means. So if we know what audit means, we want to know the finances. And I want to know the finances because if we don't know the finances, how can we vote?
That is not an issue within the scope of this agreement tonight, but it does come into the process we got the process. We had the scrutiny last night, an output. We've then got a special tonight on the December memorandum of understanding. We've then got it culminates in the full council. There's 180. I haven't seen the business case yet. Those questions can come out in the process, but they're not here tonight to discuss this draft memorandum of understanding that we're commenting on. Is if it's not about tonight whether one should go through or not, but if it does go through, what is the governance framework comments we can pass on to cabinet for the 6th of December. So we cannot, just put in don't do it tonight, I don't think. Councillor Chandler. So Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask the monitoring officer, with regards to governance arrangements, if our government, because we have the LGA, the LGA will review our governance arrangements at some point in terms of the cabinet versus committee system. Is that due in the next couple of years? What implications would that have for this? And if Harbour were to move to a committee structure rather than a cabinet structure they have at the moment, what implications in terms of governance arrangements that feed into this? What implication would they have?
Sorry, I kept trying to come in there and you hadn't finished your question. So the short answer is none at this moment in time, because the governance arrangements that have been set out in the MOA are informal structures that will sit at both authorities. What we might need to do if one authority changed to a committee system or change their governance arrangements is just review like the makeup of those. So it's very clear in the appendices that our panels and groups are made up of X amount of cabinet members, X amount of normal members. So that would obviously change because the terminology would be different. But other than that, the structure that we've set out in the MOA should remain, because it's how we oversee the partnership. And actually that doesn't really, it's not impacted by what type of governance structure is operated at either council in any big way.
Councillor Chandler.
13.1 and 13.2 on page 15, environmental and climate change implications. I've always favoured the fact that we've got to get in bed with somebody, not necessarily Market Harborough, because I think they're too far away for many of us. But we've got to try and reduce our costs. I mean, that's a fact. All business has to do that today. So this is nothing new. But it said it's an opportunity to reduce travel-based carbon emissions across the proposed partnerships. Well, if we're going to merge services together and that service is based at Market Harborough, it's hardly going to save the planet coming to Bottisford or even where I live mustn't. I mean, I'm 42 miles away from Market Harborough and 51 from Lutterworth. I mean, some have surely been based at Lutterworth.
Thank you. So I should have note down that we refer to cabinet. There's a possibility, that the governance doesn't, they need to be aware of the need or the concern about outreach to rural areas.
Members will recall away from Market Harborough because they're based at Market Harborough. We've got yellow lines everywhere, but as you well know yourself, people park on them. It attracts cars. It doesn't deter them because we never got anybody to say get off. The police, as you and I met with them this summer, said they can stop them parking round a corner where there are double yellow lines, but they've got no powers. It's the traffic enforcement officers, which seems a bit strange to me, but there you are. But I mean, but that's a fact now. That's happening now, and it's been happening now for well over. I mean, a long time before you were elected, that was happening.
I'll take note of that, but also I think I ought to have mentioned earlier in the meeting that the risk comments that we make have to be in relation to the document at the end, rather than necessarily. We can note the paragraphs and separate it off, but we have to look at focus on that particular agreement, and I can put it in as an additional comment if it's not a specific reference in the next. Councillor Douglas.
Yes, page 15 in the risk and mitigation section. Risk number 1, this memorandum is insufficient to protect the council, resulting in the following. You've got poor or less effective service provision or value for money. But the one I am really interested in is the next one. One council unlawfully subsidises the other council. I appreciate the word unlawfully means it's accidental or unseen, or I just wonder, with this point to be included, there must be some identified possibilities that this may happen, and I'm just wondering what could happen. Has there been any kind of work done on identifying how this unlawful subsidisation of another council, us to them or them to us, could occur? Because I think that could be really interesting. Thank you.
The monitor officer will give you an answer on that one.
The very quick answer to that, Councillor Douglas, is that it cannot occur. So the reason that we've highlighted that risk is to make it absolutely crystal clear that under no circumstances can one of the councils subsidise the other council. And then we've said that the likelihood of that is really low because we have a fabulous Section 151 officer for us that wouldn't allow that to happen. But what we've done in the agreement is explicitly set that out so that it is crystal clear that this partnership does not mean that we, Melton Borough Council, will be able to use Harborough District Council's budget and they can come and use ours. We remain 2 separate councils and our budgets will remain completely separate, not just because that's how we want this to be set up, but because by law, we are unable to mix those pots in any way, shape or form. So we've highlighted that as a risk because we're not allowed to do it. So we have expressly set out in the memorandum of agreement that will not be done, that each council's finances will have to remain separate.
Can I just come back?
Certainly, councillor.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you for that. That is clear and concise. If we were to, the next point, the council incurs unexpected exit costs. Does it follow on that there should be no exit costs? I mean, could there be any legal case suits from one to the other that we're trying to get out early or get off the hook with some other, could we be taken to court? I mean, has this ever happened before? Has any work been done on other councils' issues as they're trying to extricate themselves from someone else? Could it be costly to us if we wanted to do that?
I think if we don't do our due diligence and haven't prepared properly, then yes, it could be costly because unforeseen costs of exit that they're exactly that, unforeseen. But what we've tried to do is anticipate that as a risk, and we've built that into the agreement. So actually the parties, if there is an early exit, will share the cost on the basis upon which we've agreed to share those costs, whether that's 50-50 or whether that's part of the other options that are available that the 151s will look at when we deal with business cases, if this is approved later down the line. Have any other councils been taken to court over exit? I'm going to say no, but I think at that point, that's probably where our strategic advisor might be able to come in and provide some advice on that, because he has a number of years of experience in this area. I'm hoping, Nathan, that you can hear me.
I can, Kieran, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
So it's a really good question. And I think the importance of what your monitoring officer, Kieran, has outlined is we've highlighted in the risk sections that without a good memorandum of agreement in place, those are the types of risks that could occur going into partnership. But the draft memorandum agreement that you've got to your review in this evening covers off those eventualities. So as far as I'm aware, and I've been involved in a number of separations of partnerships across district councils, and in one case between a county council and a district council, where those authorities have had good memorandums of agreement in place, they have been able to avoid unexpected exit costs as they decouple. And as Kieran was outlining earlier, the basis of your memorandum of agreement, whilst tailored to your needs, is based on some of those good memorandum agreements that have been tested in those circumstances where there has been a separation of the partnership, and relying on the clauses that are set out in section 6 of the MOA, which deals with termination and review. So to give you reassurance, because we're aware of those situations, we have put clauses in the MOA that will protect each council from any unexpected costs arising at termination.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. At the scrutiny meeting last night, there were concerns around the arrangements of shared officers and their split. I wondered what arrangements will be in place. It might not be in this document, but in terms of to ensure that those officers are spending an equal amount of time working on issues in each council. For instance, the chief executive, because it's a 50-50 split, how do we ensure that they are definitely spending 50% of their time working on Melton, 50% of their time on Harborough? And how will that be? How will members be able to hold that to account?
Point, Councillor. I'd noted that the 50% is mentioned in the covering document, but not mentioned as 50% in the memorandum of understanding. The split exactly like that. And I had my question was, how do we keep score? Right. There's that issue. And if I can link to it as what you may be linking to this is, I think it's paragraph 4.12 of the MOU. And then there's paragraph 5.3 on page 27. Members might be interested to, is in where further staff may be shared. There's an apportionment calculations proposed in the draft based on size of population and everything. I went through this because I've had to do this before, that we turn up for 260 days a year, and then you've got leave, bank holidays, sickness, working on shared board work and everything, and admin, professional development and everything, and you end up under a 35% arrangements of something like 1.25 days a week equivalent. And at 50%, 8 days a month of direct work. And what I wanted to flag up to Cabinet to consider, would that be actually enough to cover the work that's required? And would it mean that you've then got to bring in a cost underneath that person to do the work that they can't do? Does that make any sense? Wilkinson.
Yeah, I know where you're coming from with regards to that. In 4.12, it says they shall divide their time fairly and reasonably between the councils. What is the definition of fair and reasonably? It's supposed to be 50-50, but within the document it doesn't say 50-50. It says fair and reasonably between the two.
Does anybody want to give an answer on that on that one?
I'm probably best placed to come in on this one unless Nathan wants to add anything. Councillor Wilkinson, what can I say? It's a fair point. It does say fair and reasonable because it provides the flexibility where there's a concentration on a project in one council, but the fair and reasonable means that actually if your time's going to be taken up here at this point, then it needs to be repaid back and then at another point. The point is taken, and if that's something that members of this committee wish to feed back to, I nearly said audit and standards, cabinet, then that's definitely something that we can take back. And if that will provide members of this committee with that further reassurance, we can include a reference to 50% or the split, you know, refer it back to what's agreed.
Just to build on that, we've had instances in this council where planning and licensing have shared officers, and actually licensing has fallen short because that officer has spent so much time on planning that there's been service implications. And my worry is that that may happen on a larger scale within the scope of this, if that makes sense.
It's a fair point,
Because
definitely
it
one
should
we'll
be
take back.
50-50, but yeah.
Chair.
A slight point of correction there, councillor. You might find that there's a report coming out soon that suggests that certain enforcement on licensing may not actually have been done, and we've already had a report on planning that it wasn't done. They weren't doing it on planning, so that will be an interesting report. There's some thank you very much for that. Councillor, any more? No, not yet. And note for cabinet is it says on page 17, paragraph 17 on page 33 covers the Bribery Act and it's requesting both parties to comply with the Bribery Act. As part of compliance with the Bribery Act, there is and the guidance laid down by the Ministry of Justice, there is the Bribery Act risk assessment coming to the 30th of November audit committee, and then we'll take that forward as to what steps need to be looked into after that. The one point that I've got that doesn't come up was the Schedule 3, the Shared Strategy Board, and it links into the other group. What I'm used to seeing in something like this that gave me a bit of trouble working it out, I'm used to seeing boxes with the flow from the council to the different groups and who does what, so you can see whether something's being missed or duplicated. What concerned me about this was well, it's on the list, I'd like to put on the list for the cabinet, was that we're talking about meeting it every 6 months. My own personal view is if it was left to 6 months, things could be going awry because they've then got to monitor the subordinate group, which I forget what that's called at Schedule 2. And it's sometimes some of the same people on it as well. So I would have thought that it was not necessarily all that clear to me reading it, the flow of who does what and who's who, and it could actually be take you about 18 months to turn something round that was relatively simple. So I was wondering whether at the start that 6 months was enough. And I'll link this to the withdrawal agreement. It seems to me that if it's a good idea, it seems to me it doesn't matter what political party you are, the shared arrangements will produce what you want in a quality and cost effective way, and that by the time of the election there should be enough put in place from January in the 2 quarters and monitored for the chief executive to be in a good position to sit down with the new people and say we're on top of everything, and put the shared arrangements in a good position. And it was just that length of time, the 6 months rather than quarterly. I noted. Yes.
It is a really valid point, Chair. I just want to bring members' attention to page 42 at paragraph 17. It does say the shared strategy board, but it says will meet at least on 2 occasions. So that's the minimum they would be required to meet in any 1 year. So they can meet at much shorter notice, so quarterly or monthly if necessary, depending on what they were needing to consider.
Noted the wording didn't need changing. It was a point I wanted to just put forward.
Well, you know me, Chair, I like
Yeah.
to clarify things.
Anything else, members? If I can, I'll go through the list of the key issues that we're pointing out relevant to it. We would put forward to the cabinet that we think that the arrangement should allow easy withdrawal after 3 months of the election to the 31st of July 2023, and also to consider how it would operate if there was a change to a committee structure. Fair and reasonable portioning of the costs. How is that going to be managed? What impact will the calculation of 35% have on it? And I would particularly point towards that we've got a housing plan, housing responsibilities, and a plan. Housing is in focus. Personally, I think we need to, some councils need to reflect as to whether they think they can sustainably manage over 20 years, given all the quality control and laws that are coming down on social landlords. We've got that to manage. So there's a 35%. There is the 6 months and arrangements to basically keep it on track for the to the point early on, which would put the good information available on the by the 31st of July when the new people come in. And Councillor Chandler's raised the rural area services issues from how do we rationalise, centralise, yet provide physical bodies and costs out at locations. Does that reflect what we've been discussing? Do we need to continue the meeting anymore? Anybody? Councillor Fisher?
Only one question, I don't know how relevant it is, but on page 27, 5.4, when we're looking at apportionment of costs for the strategic partnership, is that apportionment of costs going to include this initial consultation that they're both put in 50,000?
Sorry, Councillor Fisher.
5.4
5.4 of the
page
report.
Page 27, 5.4.
Would you ask the question again?
So
Oh,
the councils review the apportionment of costs of the strategic partnership as and when new data becomes available, and in any event within 1 year of the commencement of the strategic partnership. Will that include the initial consultation?
I think finance officer might be
the
best placed
director
to
will
answer
answer that
question.
one.
Yes, so you're referring to the costs of the consultancy and
Yeah.
producing the business case. They've been shared equally between each council.
Thank you. Can we close the meeting now and agree that I will write and a copy members in listing those points with the references in the memorandum of understanding? Sorry, Osnett.
Yeah. Yes, I know what Kieran's just said, but where is that money coming for those extra legal costs that we've got to pay?
Yeah, if I may answer that. So we've put in, both parties have put in £50,000 into the consultancy for setting this up, but actually the costs of consultancy to date are below that. So there's still some capacity in there to pay for other consultancy.
Director. Wilkinson.
Thank you, Jed. What are the costs to date, numerically wise? How much have we spent on this so far? Obviously, because you're saying that they're below what we anticipated.
Yeah, I was drawing on the business case that was presented yesterday, and I think they were 32 something each, 32,400, something like that.
Thank you. Are we in agreement that we can close the meeting? I will call the meeting closed. Thank you very much.